Mistakenly deported man Kilmar Abrego Garcia is moving to dismiss his criminal case in Tennessee, arguing he was the subject of a vindictive and selective prosecution by the federal government. The motion is filed by those who feel they have been unfairly singled out by prosecutors and charged when others similarly situated would not have been.
The filing details what Garcia's legal team sees as a number of irregularities in the case. They point to a lead prosecutor resigning over concerns that the case was being brought for political reasons. Then you've got the government's star witness in the case, being given work authorization after a history of being repeatedly deported. Abrego Garcia is facing human trafficking charges related to a 2022 traffic stop in Tennessee.
All right, let's bring in Chief Legal Analyst Khalif to talk about this. So this is focusing on this original case from 2022. What do you make of their arguments to get it dismissed? Do you think they have a leg to stand on?
The request to do a selective and vindictive type of prosecution, that's a hard one to be able to prove. And the irony behind this is that the Trump administration, specifically President Trump's attorneys, when he was being prosecuted in New York, used this exact same argument, and it was unsuccessful there. With their attempt to appeal his New York conviction in any other case going forward up there, against Letitia James and her team, they said the exact same thing, that this is selective, that this was vindictive, that other folks similarly situated have attempted to do this in the past, and you've never brought prosecution against them. Now you're going against my client. Why? Because it's politically motivated. Now Abrego's team is saying the exact same thing. So that argument is extremely hard to be successful. The prosecutor has a wide range of authority and discretion. And so, yes, they can bring claims, and that's not just prosecutors on the state level, that's attorney generals, that's solicitors, it's whoever it's in that elected or appointed position is given the authority based on the facts that are presented to them, and every case is different. And so, yes, they may have let 5 other folks go by, but if your case was specifically set for them to listen to it, to hear it, and they decide to go for it, it is within their prosecutorial decision to do it. Now, do I think he was selected based on the era of the time it was happening? 100%. But do I think their argument stands a chance in court? Not at all.
Okay, so if the vindictive prosecution fails, what do other defendants out there, how do they protect themselves against maybe a targeted prosecution down the road, and the sequence of events on how this one unfolded?
I mean, first of all, you just want to make the argument. You want to make sure that you're preserving the argument for appeal, because obviously there's multiple levels to our court systems, to our trial court and appellate court systems. So this is the first level. If you go here and this federal judge declines to move on your request that you were selectively prosecuted and it was vindictive in nature, then you just file an appeal. But if you never raise this argument on the lower level, there is no appeal. The appeals court will say you failed to even raise the argument. So you first bring the argument. The judge can either say, nope, I don't buy it, or yes, I entertain this argument. But it's twofold. You're making the argument and you hope they buy it, but you're also forward-looking, forward-facing, trying to preserve a future argument going down the road for the Court of Appeals and ultimately the Supreme Court.
Okay, so Khalif, you set the road for it to likely go to appeals, and you've also talked about the difficulty in proving this. What type of evidence would they need? Is it time, a conversation between President Trump and Pam Bondi saying we're going after Kilmar for this? What evidence would they need to be able to make that claim?
All those would be helpful. I mean, if you obviously receipts, being able to point and show that it was specific, so direct targeting would say like emails, text messages, voicemails, phone calls, any type of documentation that says, hey, go after this guy. Yeah. And we've not went after folks like him in the past, but we want to prove a point. That would be, clear. But then you also can point to statistics from the past. If you're seeing individuals like this that have these types of cases and they've never been prosecuted ever, and you've had maybe 1,000 of them, then that would also show that it's selective, that it's vindictive. But the direct evidence, that's way more powerful. I mean, both of them are different levels, but you're presenting in front of the judge your entire case. Sometimes you'll have, circumstantial evidence. Sometimes you'll have direct evidence. The overwhelming majority of cases on the criminal side are won or lost by circumstantial evidence anyway. So you're not going to find that smoking gun. You're not going to see the guy with the video on the grassy knoll. You're going to piece it together, and then piecing all that together, present before the judge your picture, while at the same time the other side is painting a picture, and then the judge is going to make a determination of which picture they like best.
What does this filing do for other cases where people have been deported from the country? The argument being these people have been charged with crimes, human trafficking, violence, things like that. What does it do for other people who are facing similar allegations and being deported?
I think the issue with his case is it's uniquely set apart. What sets him apart is that he already had an immigration judge declare and determine that he was someone that was not deportable, someone that should not be deported because they were seeking asylum in our country. They were running from persecution in their home country. Typically, when you have an immigration judge grant an order like that, ICE, anyone else is not touching you. So that error, that mistake is what makes it problematic. Most of those other situations that you're talking about, the overwhelming majority of those folks that have come to the country illegally and have committed some other crime while here, they're not going to have an order from a judge from 2019 that says you cannot deport this person. That's why we're even talking about him, because the Trump administration decided that we're going to disregard this judge's order. Then when they were caught, they said, okay, well, actually, he has these charges, and he has these charges from 2022. What his defense team said here is that, look, back in 2022, the Tennessee officers that pulled him over just suspected that he was engaged in human trafficking. However, they let him drive off with 9 other folks still in the van. So if you really believe that he was human trafficking, you would have arrested him right there on the spot. You would have taken the 9 people out of the van. You would have done something in that instance, but there was nothing done. So you're looking at a traffic stop that resulted in no criminal charges as the basis for what you're alleging is that he was engaged in some human trafficking. They're saying, well, why didn't you arrest him then? Why are we waiting now 3 years to come even to have this conversation? They're saying you're trying to find a way to criminalize his activity where he was doing nothing illegal at the time. So both arguments are being made, and the Trump administration is being now walking backwards because they were caught in a situation where they wrongfully deported him. Had they never wrongfully deported him, I think this case would have been open and shut. They would have allowed him to be removed instantly based on any criminal activity with the Tennessee case. But they had already overruled and overridden a 19 order from a judge, which they shouldn't have done.
All right, Khalif, we'll see how far the case goes or if it's appealed. Appreciate it.
Queen City News Plus. Just search Queen City News on your smart TV's app store.